Baltimore City Council Ways and Means Committee, we're back in session for Council Bill 23-0381, Ordinance of Estimates for the fiscal year ending June 30, 2024. I'm Eric Costello, Councilman from the 11th District, Chair of the committee, joined by Councilman Robert Stokes, 12th District, member of the committee, Councilwoman Odette Ramos, 14th District, Councilman Chris Burnett, 8th District, member of the committee. To my immediate right, Marguerite Curran, staff to the committee. We have representatives from Mayor Brandon Scott's office and Council President Nick Mosby's office. We are here today for Parking Authority of Baltimore City. Mr. Little, thank you for being with us today. If you would please introduce everyone on your senior team, name, and I know everyone here. It's great to see you all. But introduce full name and position title, and then jump right into your slide deck, and then we'll jump into questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Costello and committee members. With me here today, Sandra Downs, who's our Chief Financial Officer, Candace New, our Chief Operations Officer, and David Rhodes, our General Counsel. And I am Pete Little, Executive Director with the Parking Authority. The Parking Authority is a small and lean quasi-agency with 50 team members. We're tasked with managing a range of the city's parking assets and programs. We manage the city's parking meter program with over 2,000 single-space parking meters and nearly 1,000 multi-space parking meters. They create parking availability at about 12,000 parking spaces in commercial districts throughout the city. We also manage the distribution of over 30,000 permits annually to residents in the city's 48 residential permit parking areas. We administer the city's residential reserved disabled parking program, which provides residents with permanent mobility restricting disabilities and no on-premises parking with reserved spaces in front of their homes. And this program currently serves over 3,400 residents with dozens of new applications arriving monthly. We also manage the city's valet regulations program, which has done a remarkable job of curbing issues and abuses with valet parking operations. We manage 13 city-owned or operated parking garages and 20 parking lots with over 10,000 parking spaces. And our parking planning division collects and analyzes data to develop parking plans to address parking issues throughout the city. We're also leading the city's efforts to bring more publicly accessible electric vehicle charging stations to the city. Advance the slide here. So a few of our goals for fiscal year 24 include capital repairs and renovations, excuse me, at a number of garages to ensure their safety and their value. Installation of new parking access and revenue control equipment in the garages to replace outdated 20-year-old technology that we have there now. We're also looking to introduce multiple mobile payment apps and a text-to-pay option at parking meters. And we will be expanding the virtual permit parking program to additional residential permit parking areas. Here we go. So this service is supported by the Parking Enterprise Fund and the Parking Management Fund. Revenues from parking garages, parking meters, parking permits, parking citations, and parking taxes get collected into those funds. And after deducting expenses for operations and paying for debt service on the city-owned garages, surplus revenue is then transferred to the city's general fund annually. The recommended budget reduces our funding by $2 million for fiscal year 24. Over the past several years, we've been able to reduce contractual spending and other costs, such as utilities costs, at the facilities, and this budget reflects those decreases in spending. Our first highlighted performance measure is the number of permits distributed. During the pandemic, enforcement of residential permit parking restrictions was suspended for a time, and fewer residents acquired permits. But with the resumption of enforcement, with the addition of some new residential permit parking areas and the expansion of some existing residential permit parking areas, we expect to distribute an increasing number of permits. The second highlighted performance measure is revenue collected per space at city-owned off-street parking facilities. We continue to see slow but steady increases in revenues at our garages and lots as we've emerged from the pandemic. So that's my presentation. If you have any questions.
Thank you. We've also been joined by Council President Nick Mosby. Pete, I had a quick question. I don't know if this is parking authority related. The Cathedral Street garage at 1311 Cathedral Street, that's not in our inventory, correct?
That's not a garage that we manage, no.
But is that city-owned?
It was built using, with the borrowing, essentially, of parking revenue bonds in order to build that garage. And I believe it's the BSO was repaying the city on that.
Okay,
So it was built under an installment sale and operating agreement whereby they operate it, but then pay the city back. Essentially, the city is like the mortgage company,
got it.
but we don't manage it, no.
Do you know if we own it? I'm checking code map. I just don't even worry about that. I'll get the answer. Yeah.
No.
Okay. Just curious. We got a constituent inquiry on that yesterday. Other than that, you guys are fantastic. Model agency. Appreciate you guys very, very much. Good to see the merchant over here, Mr. Rhodes. And Candace, appreciate you and your team. I know that Ms. Shamir Cole had very big shoes to fill in Steve Robinson, and she has done an absolutely outstanding job. So if you could please pass that feedback back along to her. Very happy to have her support for, I think I got 14 of the 51 RPP areas in the city, so I'm a frequent flyer with you all. So thank you. Mr. President? I'm okay. Councilman Stokes? And Councilman Stokes, you're a member of the board, correct?
Yeah, I was gonna say full disclosure, I'm a member of the PAC board, but I work closely with this group and I know how they're thorough with their work. Everything, the I's are dotted, the T's are crossed, the Z's are made right. I'm just saying, y'all such a model group that maybe you can help train some other organizations how to run a tight ship, but make sure that everything is, the I's and the T's are done. I've been on there for a while, but it's just, y'all tremendous. Y'all run it right, perfect. Everything is done in order, so I just want to say congratulations.
Well, thank you for your support and your service on the board, and asking good questions at meetings as well, too, and so we appreciate your service on the board. Thank you.
And I think the previous council member on the board was Council Vice President Middleton?
Yes, it was.
All right. She couldn't be here this morning. She had some family matters to attend to, but Councilwoman Ramos.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, team, for being here. I have a couple of questions. One is we have a lot of the residential reserved parking that isn't needed anymore for lots of reasons. Is there a process that do residents just call 311 and say, hey, this isn't needed anymore? Because right now we have so many that it doesn't make sense to keep them there. So what is that, or do you do a renewal process where you work with the resident, and if you don't hear from them, then you take the signs down? What's the process?
Yep, there's an annual renewal for that program, and so if a resident does not respond, or if, say, a relative responds and says that either that particular resident has moved away or passed away, then we'll put a work order in with Department of Transportation sign shop to have them removed. And beyond that, people can call 311 and report that signs should be removed, or they can email or call our office directly to let us know. And of course, if we get those inquiries, we do have to investigate to make sure that information is accurate.
Right, because you don't want to have a vendetta against somebody. Yeah, I got it.
Same process, then we submit the work orders to the Department of Transportation sign shop to go and remove them.
Okay, well, we'll send you our backlog. And just because I also know that earlier in the year, last year, DOT had issues with, they couldn't find poles. And so, you know, those would be great poles if they're not needed. So, yeah. Okay, well, thanks. We'll just make sure, because I don't know whether it's people don't get the mailer or nobody's responding, or you know, the other piece is capacity. If like you do get, you do have a renewal process, but you may not have enough people to investigate. I mean, that's the only reason. I don't know what else would be the reason why there's not a.
Yeah, it's a very busy section.
Sure.
We do have only 2 full-time people that manage that section. But they do keep up, especially with requests for removals, because they understand, you know, how important these parking spots are.
Okay.
So they do a very good job of keeping up with that. There may be, as you mentioned, you know, a lag with the Department of Transportation sign shop, because they've got a lot of work as well, too, in terms of removing
Sure,
them.
there's no question about that,
Yep.
that could be the issue.
But in
Yeah.
terms of the investigations, yeah, our shop is pretty quick in terms of that investigation and putting in those work orders. That's a priority. And we do remove anywhere between a dozen and 2 dozen every month that do get removed.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, we'll send you our list. You know what, Gabe may have sent it to you already, and just go through that. I appreciate that. Thank you
Sure.
very much. I saw also in the budget book that you doing surveys to see sort of what people are saying in terms of difficulty finding parking. I'm curious about how those surveys are deployed, how often they're done. I mean, I know we just there was a parking survey recently done in Hamden around the business area, but this says residential, so I'm just curious about this measure and how the surveys are done.
So when the mayor's office was putting out their annual survey to citizens, that was a question on the
okay.
mayor's survey. I think I've read that the mayor does plan on putting out the survey again, and we're hoping that question can remain on the survey.
Yeah, because that percentage looks low to me, given the complaints that I get about parking in my
Yeah.
district.
While in some areas more than others, we would expect that. Our goal really is to just see that number improve on an annual basis through the work that we do.
Well, you want the number to go down.
Right.
Yeah.
Those that are dissatisfied, right? We want
Correct.
people to be more satisfied.
Correct. You want the number to go down. Do you splice it by neighborhood, so you can, like, the data come to you by neighborhood, so you can see, you know,
I think in the past it did, yeah. The mayor's office was able to separate it by neighborhood. based
Okay, I'd
on
be interested
the
to sort of
responses.
get the, you know, well, never mind, I already know. Just what I'm getting in my district in terms of complaints. Did you want to add?
Yeah, I was going to add, so as Director Little said, this was a part of the community survey that the city ran up until 2015, and the Mayor Scott we're working with the administration to relaunch that. And so I just wanted to add that data is available on our website from the prior ones. And so when that gets relaunched, we are working on the questions with our vendor now to see where that will go. And so we'll keep in touch with the council on what that will look like.
Oh, that would be why there's a non-applicable for the previous years.
Correct.
Okay, so to relaunch that, I remember doing that survey, so yeah, okay. I didn't realize that was happening. Do we get a chance, just as a aside, or maybe the mayor's office knows, are we able to add like questions to the survey? Do we know how that process is gonna move forward, or that's a mayor's office question?
We will be coordinating with the mayor's office on what the process to inform the council of that will look like moving forward, and we're finalizing that now with our vendor. So I can follow up with you.
Yeah, I have some questions that I'd like to add. So, cool, okay, well, that's a separate issue, but I'm glad to know about that, and hopefully we can collaborate on that, so. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councilman Burnett.
Thank you, and would second, it's been great working with your team. I only have like half a block of restricted parking in my district, but don't really get complaints about it other than a few years ago when there was sort of I think you were working with me on the sort of tension around the old New Samus site and people, whatever. We don't want to get into it. We navigated it pretty effectively, so thank you for that. The only question I had, and this has come up, and I did work with someone on your team on this, but it's more of like a higher level policy question. So we've gotten 2 complaints, not a lot, around folks they're older adults who have disability parking, and there were complaints about having to renew year over year. Other jurisdictions, from what we've seen, operate on like a 3-year or 5-year cycle of renewal. And to piggyback on the question that was asked prior about like if someone passes away or moves, there's obviously a way to communicate that that occurred. Had there been consideration about moving away from the annual renewal, which the complaints that we received were from older adults who were like, look, navigating this process is just a challenge for me. Can I do this on a slower cycle, or again, sort of promoting this like sort of lengthier renewal cycle, so they don't have to do it every year? And the concern wasn't so much like, it was like literally like, I gotta remember how to use my laptop or to call. Like, it's just sort of a burden for folks who aren't necessarily super tech savvy or may have a disability that prevents them from doing so in an easier way. Is there consideration, or could there be consideration for doing a 3 or 5 year renewal with, obviously, if something, they move or pass away in that interim, there's obviously mechanisms for their neighbors to communicate that with you all. So there may not necessarily be a need to keep reconfirming that this person has a disability or still needs the space. Can we talk through that a little bit?
Yeah, we have considered that in the past, and as we considered it, we have gotten pushback on that concept from some other council members, because they do want to see those spaces, especially in the most parking congested neighborhoods, they want to see them removed as quickly as possible. But we can certainly consider it again, because yeah, it is a process to even reapply for the program. You have to go back to the doctor, get the documentation from the doctor, and although the application is much shorter for renewal, obviously, but it is still a process. So we can examine that again and determine, and then possibly speak with those particular council members to see if that it might be doable. Yep.
Yeah, I think it'd be something worth considering, because I mean, even I do understand that context matters and where you are in the city and how restricted parking can be. Not a huge problem in my district overall, but I do get it. But I think wherever you live, it still can be challenging to keep renewing year after year and go through that process. And so maybe there's a subcategory of folks that don't have to do it, or there's a certain geography that maybe if you live near the stadium or a high traffic area or high visitor area, maybe you leave that in place or don't, or I don't know. I think the fact is that there are folks that obviously have some sort of disability, living with a disability, and making it as easy for them to renew or go through this process. I think it should just be the focus. I understand like freeing up spaces and whatnot, but folks are already living with challenges, and so just making it easy for them, regardless of where they live, I think should be the focus overall, because it can be burdensome to go through this.
Yep, we'll certainly take a look at it. I mean, it would obviously mean less work for our staff as well too, if they don't have to review as many renewal applications annually.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mr. Chair,
Thank
can
you.
I
Yep.
follow up on that real quick? Can I follow up real quick? Yeah.
Sure.
Thank you. So obviously you just heard two different things. So I'm going to offer that, does it make sense? I mean, you had mentioned that the renewal process is not as burdensome. Is that correct?
No, it is, frankly, for
Well,
those
then
residents who have it.
The way to do
because-
it is just sort of a recertification or something like that, where you don't have to go back to the doctor each year. Like that I agree with you, Councilman, on that one, because that doesn't make any sense. But at least, if there's a way to, I mean, I think it's important that people can park in front of their house if they have a disability, no question about it. If they're not used, they should be removed, but if there's a way to make the renewal process, again, they don't have to go to the doctor, just like, yep, we're still in the same situation, check, move on, or something, you know what I mean? So it's not as burdensome.
Yeah.
But it's
right.
still data that you have to be able to say, yep, the signs still go there.
Yep, we'll take a look at that. Yep. I think we've used that doctor's notification because, there have been times when the person has deceased, unfortunately, and family members continue to park in
Yeah,
that space and
that's what I
using
had.
it. We've had other circumstances where the person has been deceased, they get the renewal notification. Family members will fill it out, but then not include the doctor's certificate there. That's been sort of our real test to determine whether the person's actually still alive and there. But there probably are other ways that we can confirm that. So we'll definitely look at it. Yep.
Cool. Thank you.
Sorry, can I have a quick follow-up or question? Mr. Chair. Would it be possible to have that doctor recertification every 3 to 5 years? So maybe in the interim, it's sort of, unless you hear otherwise, and in that, a 3 to 5 year window, then they got to go back to the doctor? Maybe it's a compromise here?
Yep.
Okay.
I think, yeah, we'll look at it again. We've got to make sure that it fits within code too, because that's a codified program. Yep,
Well, yeah, talk to us. I mean, if there's barriers to that.
yep, yep.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Little, can you explain, I know at one time, and this is great, they used to break in the machines when you pay for your parking, and y'all were able to do, use your license plate, and I think that's great. A lot of residents like that because you ain't got to put money in the meter and go back and get back in the car and put the sticker in the window. It's much easier. But I wanted to mention, can you explain, one, where you expanded your license plate readers also, one? The second question is, a lot of times when people are parked and don't have a permit and they were not a residential, don't have the permit, and they usually would call your office when they need to call the city. And the only reason why I'm asking that, because if the public is listening, they can understand that process. Because what happens if they parked in a residential area and they don't have a permit, then they think it's your responsibility to make sure they either ticket them or they got to move it. So can you explain it also to us?
Sure. Yep. First, the new parking meters where you punch in your license plate and then pay for your parking, and then you can go directly to your destination. They replaced those older parking meters where you had to take your receipt, what we call a pay and display your receipt parking meters. So we've replaced all of those pay and display multi-space meters with the pay by license plate meters. And that has also, though, helped to reduce people trying to break into the meters in order to get change or to do some other things with the meters in order to steal change out of them, which has reduced then the vandalism. It has increased the uptime of the meters over the years.
And they couldn't sell a ticket either.
Right, right. And there's no longer that. Or counterfeit tickets as well, too, which was from time to time a problem. So that's no longer an issue. But then your other point, the parking authority does not oversee parking enforcement. That's part of the Baltimore City Department of Transportation's safety division, although we do get calls about it, and it's a natural mistake for folks to make that we oversee that too.
But I wanted to hear if the public listening hear you say it, not me.
Thank you.
Thank you. Council President?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Little. As been expressed prior, you have always been extremely responsive. Truly appreciate working with you. Obviously, in going into that, I was very troubled by the decision by the administration with the CFG arena deal. I think that we've sat through these budget hearings the past couple of days, and what keeps coming up is opportunities for revenue, and as it relates to our bonding capacity to increase, to go after some of the deferred maintenance, or just in general trying to grow revenue. Was really concerned with the administration's decision to throw all the operations to CFG and allow them to fix up the much-needed repairs that either we're going to do or that they're going to do. We just allow them to do it, payment in lieu of paying us for the operation of the facility. With that, and since it's not in our control at this point, I guess the question is, have the rate for the arena parking lot increased at all, or is it the same as it was when it was under city's control?
I think some of the rates have increased, but they've also, but I don't know for sure exactly which rates they may be.
Is there any way for you to find that information out?
Yeah, we can
If
go
you,
and check.
if you could let us know where it was pre-CFG operation versus where it is today. Obviously being in that heart of the central business district, we understand and know the time and attention and the energy that's placed just in and around that space. That's going to become a very lucrative garage and in a really important area. Just trying to understand, I guess, their strategy. Obviously, at this point, they do have operations of it for the next 30 years. Is that accurate, based off that
Yes.
agreement? And so just want to kind of be mindful of, when we continue to talk about revenue, we have to also talk about the decisions that we're making around revenue and potentially where that garage is going to be in 5 years, in 10 years, in 15 years. In my thought process is potentially losing a lot of revenue. Now, obviously, risk versus reward, but we can literally say that for any of the other 14 garages or so that you guys can't kind of currently manage and operate.
Yep.
So if you could just provide that information, I really appreciate that.
Yep, we'll gather that.
The next question, just going down the line of, when there are private developments that require parking garages, has there ever been a time where the city has come in as opposed to like a TIF, but the city has kind of built and managed it, understanding and knowing the current need and conditions? That's one question. And then second question, are there any plans on building any additional garages throughout the city that maybe the city council does not know of as of yet?
In answer to your first question, I'm trying to think of if there's been a particular private development where the city's come in and built the garage portion. Not like a particular development, but for instance, the Fleet and Eden garage, which is over in Harbor East, was built in order to support a bunch of those businesses coming to Harbor East there, into buildings that were being renovated that didn't have parking of their own. So the city has built garages in some areas of the city in order to help to spur development within those particular areas.
And that's a needed resource, but also a way for city to potentially take in revenue, correct?
Yes.
I'm trying to understand, is it revenue neutral or?
If the garage is successful.
Yeah,
there.
is that successful, the Fleet Street?
That Fleet and Eden garage, I think at the end of the day, after debt service, it's probably not.
Oh, it's not?
currently.
Oh, wow.
No. Yep. So sometimes it's, operating the garages, between the operating expenses and the debt service, a garage has to typically generate $200 per month per parking space, and that can be difficult here in Baltimore City in order to do that. So sometimes it's not, sometimes it is. In some circumstances, like that one for Fleet and Eden, we may work with Baltimore Development Corporation to show that the overall impact of the city will still be great, even if the garage operates at a loss, at least during that debt service period.
Understood.
Yeah.
And then the second question, are there any plans for any additional garages that you know of at this
There are
time?
not any plans for a city.
City
garage
garage,
to be
yeah,
built.
totally.
No.
Thank you so much.
Yep,
Thank you,
sure.
Mr. Chair. If you could give me the information on the CFG, I really appreciate it.
Will do.
And then do you have an itemized breakdown that kind of shows the analysis of each garage and where we are? If
Like
it's
the
net
financials
neutral,
for
if it's
each
break-
garage?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, sure.
Is that possible?
Yep.
Thank you.
Mr. President, is that a request?
Yeah, 2 requests. So one request, he's going to give us a financial breakdown, itemized list of the garages, as well as, I guess, the payment structure or schedule associated with post-CFG taking over and the city operating it prior.
Okay, thank you. I just want to recognize Councilman Cohen from the 1st District. Real quick, Peter, the parking garage that's across from, it was called a Baltimore Arena, it was called a Civic Center, and there's a CFG, and they had so many names. Do y'all manage that parking garage right across from the CFG?
Across Baltimore Street?
Yes.
From it? No.
Was it ever city?
No, that one was developed and is still owned by Arrow Parking, a local firm, Arrow Parking.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from anybody? No more questions? Thank you. We appreciate your hard
Thank you
work.
very much.
And
Yep.
we're going to recess in 5 minutes and start at 11 o'clock with the Officer OIG. Thank you.
Thank you.